Like a flame licking the dry air, heat came off of the rocks and red dirt and funneled into the canyon. It moved silently and brought its terror to the 15 people who slowly made their way forward. Dehydrated, exhausted, and mentally failing, they had to keep going. This is something they paid for. And then, for the first time in 10 hours, they heard the trickle of water, and suddenly the 105-degree heat felt much more bearable. Smiles erupted on many of their faces, feet pounding the earth as they ran forward as best they could. Everyone was ecstatic, relieved. Water was finally at their feet. And one man smiled as he fell to his knees 100 yards away. "Please go get me water," he begged. Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. I'm your host, Kayla, and welcome to our free Solo Friday episode where I venture out on my own without a co-host to provide you with a short story to be enjoyed while you are waiting on the episodes I co-host with my friends. And I really want to put an emphasis on that for the current time period. Kind of the short explanation is that my grandfather had a heart attack. He's been in the hospital for several days, and there's some complications and some unknowns, and while that is kind of getting figured out, the help that I have when it comes to taking care of my son and allowing me the time and space to be able to do this podcast with others is a little bit more limited than it normally is. And so you're likely going to get a few more solo episodes as we navigate this time period, and we'll get back to having our normal schedule as soon as I can, but I don't know how soon that will be. So until then, I also want to remind you that we also have a $1 Patreon tier, and there is still some merch available. Please go check those out if you enjoy these episodes. Every little bit helps to keep this podcast ad-free. And then also at the end of the year, I'm hoping to do a donation to either one or two charities that Patreon members get to help choose. So go there. But for now, let's get into this episode. The Dixie National Forest is located 250 miles from Salt Lake City and is the largest national forest in the state of Utah, spanning nearly 2 million acres between the Great Basin and the Colorado River. When Southerners discovered the area, they felt it closely resembled the hot weather of the South and started calling the area Utah's Dixie, which then resulted in Dixie National Forest. The southwestern United States can be described as both grueling and beautiful, and with that, the Dixie National Forest gets a variety of weather, and depending on if you are in the plateaus or in the canyons, depends on what sort of weather you will experience. The plateaus usually see temperatures more steady during the summer, with a 30-degree Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius difference in temperature from day to night. But in the canyon, summer heat blisters over 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius, and then drops into the 50-degree Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius range. Aspens, spruce, pines, and junipers are common to see within the area, and rainfall can range between 10 to 40 inches or 25 to 102 centimeters per year. The forest contains hundreds of lakes, and the Pine Valley mountain range runs through the protected land. The beautiful forest is surrounded by red rocks and dirt, and this was the prime location that David Bushow was looking forward to heading next. At 29 years old, David had quite an adventurous life. Starting with his career as a security officer in the United States Air Force, he served in Saudi Arabia, Greece, and Greenland, and he was last stationed in the Marshall Islands, which is about 2,300 miles or 3,700 kilometers west of Hawaii. He had always been very active, once hiking 4 miles in complete combat gear across the Greenland tundra. He leapt from planes and climbed to mountain peaks, but then when his brother purchased property in New Jersey that sat in a quiet woods, Dave moved in with him and fell in love with the area. He was smart and kind and skilled. He built a greenhouse to grow fruits and vegetables and other plants in, and often gifted loved ones something to help them to be healthier or safer, such as bear spray, massage contraptions, and herbs to help cure headaches. He decided to find a survival school to be able to learn how to live off the land, just in case the need would ever arise. David signed up for a 28-day survival course that would take participants to their limits and was through the Boulder Outdoor Survival School, also known as BOSS, which was based in Boulder, Utah. This program cost him $3,215 US to attend. The website explained that participants in this program would learn how to catch fish with their hands, determine where water was flowing underground, and kill sheep with a knife. The 28-day course is BOSS's most popular and rigorous program. It is advertised to test both mental and physical capacity, and it is one of the hardest programs in the United States. They also have a field course that lasts 7 days, a field course that lasts 14 days, and specialty courses with a focus on primitive skills or land navigation. The goal is to create a survival experience in the hot canyons of Utah, stress the participants nearly to their breaking point, and then bring them to the finish line alive and with a larger appreciation for what it takes to truly survive. And ultimately, this program would teach them the skills necessary to survive in the wilderness, which is exactly what David was looking for. BOSS started in 1968 in Boulder, Utah, and has since expanded to Boulder, Colorado, Idaho, Mexico, and Canada. Initially, the course began when Larry Dean Olson founded a program to help college dropouts, where he would take them into the wilderness for 30 days to teach them mental resilience and adaptation. This was a huge success and laid the foundation for what the program would become today, where they focus on primitive and traditional skills. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, when you enter into a survival situation, you have to be active in your tasks to survive. You cannot just go through the motions and expect to make it out of whatever you're experiencing alive. The program takes participants out into the deserts of Utah, where participants then have to find their own food and water and carry very few survival items, such as a knife, a rain poncho, and the clothes they were already wearing. They were able to carry a 24-ounce water bottle with them, but it had to start empty. In addition to this, those participating were not allowed to carry any of the food or water they found for the first 3 days. However, the guides that would be with them would carry water, food, and some emergency items, including a satellite phone and GPS. The guides and BOSS are all certified wilderness first responders, carry full medical kits and emergency food and water, but they do not tell the participants that they have these items with them. It is not uncommon for those taking part in this course to lose more than 20 pounds during the 28 days because you are only allowed to eat and drink what you find along the way. Because of this information, David decided to try to bulk up a bit before the program and was enjoying cheesecake more often than he normally did before he left. It was suggested to participants that they should arrive 3 days earlier than the first day of the program, as it would help them acclimate to the hot and humid summer weather in Utah, as well as the elevation sitting at 7,000 feet or 2,134 meters above sea level. With Dave, there were 6 other men and 5 women participating in the 28-day course. On the first day, July 16th, 2006, Dave and the 11 others with him, along with their 3 guides, one of which was an apprentice, ran a 1.5 miles so that the guides could evaluate the physical condition of the participants. At this point, in combination with all of the participants having doctors check their health prior to the course, both doctors and guides deemed all participants fit for the survival course. Dave, while not the most athletic person in this course, was also not the most unfit person and made fast friends with those around him. His partner over the 28 days would be Jess, who is an 18-year-old woman from the United Kingdom, and one of the participants was Charlie Datar, who was 25 at the time and biked to Utah for the course from the state of Maine. And just a real quick side note, I'm pretty sure that Charlie is now a guide for the BOSS programs. On this first night, everyone separated to find their own place to sleep, and Dave in particular had brought a plastic bag to try to help keep the heat in during the temperature drops as the night crept on. On the second day, July 17th, near dawn, the group rose from their beds of dirt and started their trek into the canyons. They had a drink of water at a small stream, but this would not hold them over for long. Over the course of the day, the sun would rise high into the sky and bring the temperatures to a scorching 105 degrees Fahrenheit or 41 degrees Celsius. Dave hung toward the back of the group during the morning to stay with the couple of people he had already made friends with, but as they continued on, Dave was swaying back and forth, both physically from exhaustion, but also mentally. He began to become delusional and swing between encouraging those around him to keep moving forward and complaining of cramps in his legs. His speech soon became slurred, his tongue swelled, and his eyes bulged from his head, and his skin was beginning to pale. He was clearly showing signs of dehydration, and he was not alone. One other member was showing signs as well, so each of them had a guide nearby. At this point, even talking was difficult and felt like too much work for everyone who was involved. When you become dehydrated, the body takes action to keep as much water as possible delivered to the vital organs. The body is made up of 50 to 70% water, and when it drops below this threshold, the body automatically begins to shut down less life-conserving organs in order to provide enough water to the vital organs. Our bodies lose water from simply breathing, sweating, and of course, urinating. When a slight dehydration begins, our body pulls water from the brain and large intestine, causing headaches and constipation. As it continues, the water in our urine is pulled from the kidneys and is reabsorbed into the body, which is why your pee becomes darker when you are not properly hydrated. Then the blood, holding less water, thickens, which makes the body have to work harder to move the blood through your veins, which just makes you feel even more tired than you already are. Without water still, your eyes will contract and your lips will shrivel. Your skin dries and can even darken, and your tongue begins to toughen, making speech very difficult. Continuing without water will lead to a drop in blood pressure, depriving your heart, brain, lungs, and kidneys of oxygen. And as these organs begin to be damaged and shut down, your brain will be the first to go. If these actions are not reversed, sometimes in a very careful manner, it will lead to organ failure and death. And death by dehydration is an excruciating and drawn-out process. As the group continued into the canyon, Dave continued to decline. Around 2:30 p.m., he began to vomit and was unable to catch his breath and complained of his legs cramping badly enough he couldn't keep his balance or walk very well. Occasionally, when he stood up and got going, he started off in the wrong direction, and it took someone else intervening to get him back on the right track. Then, as he was seated beneath a tree in the shade, he began to hallucinate. Looking toward another tree across the path from him, he smiled and said, "There she is." And this is a pretty clear sign of your mental capacity decreasing. Pushing forward, though, it was about 7:30 p.m. when Dave heard the shouts from the others as they found water inside of Cottonwood Cave. He stopped where he was for a moment and then collapsed to his knees. He asked the guide who was with him, Sean O'Neill, for water, and when Sean said, "No, I'm not leaving you," Dave fell forward, face first, into the ground. Sean momentarily thought that Dave did this on purpose, but then he noticed that Dave was not breathing. They had only hiked 6 miles over the 10 hours since they got started moving at dawn, and they had nothing to drink since then. Sean hooted to the other instructors, which was their distress signal, and the others rushed down to where Dave was. One of the guides climbed to the top of a juniper tree to get cell phone reception and called the Boulder office instead of 911. As word spread about Dave's condition, the 3 guides and 2 participants took turns doing chest compressions and providing CPR. Nearly 90 minutes later, a helicopter finally arrived, and their emergency personnel tried to use a defibrillator to restart Dave's heart, but these attempts were unsuccessful. Charlie Dettar, the man who rode his bike to the course, was trained in wilderness first aid and commented that it was only after Dave had passed that they learned the guides had food and water with them. Chief Medical Examiner Edward Lease determined that dehydration and electrolyte imbalance was the cause of Dave's death, and there were no other contributing factors. Only 6 of the original members decided to continue on with the course as they felt the need to be in the desert to process what had happened. Toward the end of the course, they returned to the place Dave had died and built a cairn and laid bunches of sage and flowers on the location to honor Dave. It was later discovered that 2 other participants who were also struggling this day were given water, but Dave was refused even after he asked. I believe it is important to remember that everyone is human, and while I am mad at the fact that the guides had water and food on them and gave them to others and yet refused to give Dave either, these people are human, and unfortunately humans make mistakes, and this was a huge mistake. Not only that, but the guides, while an involved part of the process to leading participants to success, these few people can't be held to identify an entire program that has operated for their entire existence without any other deaths. The simple desire of the guides to have their participants succeed overshadowed the clear signals of physical and mental distress, which then led to the point of no return for Dave. Dave's parents would go on to sue Boss as well as 4 employees for negligence, and the lawsuit was settled outside of court, so we don't know what that agreement looks like. We also don't know if Boss took any accountability for the actions of their guides. However, part of the agreement was released that Boss was to start a scholarship to be awarded every year in memory of Dave. The family encouraged this because Dave was adamant about learning survival skills in a hands-on environment, and his family wanted to support that. And this now allows a channel for others to attend when they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it. Because Boss lost permission from the National Forest Service to use the land within Dixie National Forest for their program, they had to revamp their operating plan in order to get the license back. While we don't know all of the changes that were made, what we do know includes that the water bottle size was increased from 24 to 32 ounces for the early parts of the program, and then adding in a second bottle for the later parts of the program. Industry experts advised Boss in their operating plan, and everyone agreed that these changes were good. However, some of the recommended changes were not incorporated because it was against the school's philosophy of carrying as little as possible and challenging yourself in preparation for a real life survival situation. The Garfield County Sheriff's Office considered pressing criminal charges, but ultimately found there wasn't enough evidence to support a trial or conviction, which is both, I can see it being both a good and a bad thing, because it shows that the guides were acting within their intended realm of pushing the participants to a level of discomfort and a level of need and desire to truly survive, which is the entire purpose of the course. However, I also think it's bad because the available information out there is presenting a very clear picture that these guides failed Dave in helping him through a survival course. And the point of going through this course is to then take it out into the rest of the world with you. And you cannot do that if you die during the process. So clearly there's more to this story that we don't know and we may never know. But yeah, that's what I have for this Friday's story. I hope you enjoyed. I hope Dave's family has found peace in the time that has passed since this occurred. And thank you for listening. And stay tuned for whatever this podcast looks like over the coming month or so. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe from wherever you listen to Tragedy with a View. To get access to ad-free episodes, bonus content, and more, please join us on our Patreon. The link will be in the show notes. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And to share a story of your own, send us a Campfire Confessional email at tragedywithaview@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.